Welcome to QX Church. You find us online at qxchurch.org. I'm Pastor Scott Conway, and I'm going to pray us in first, and then we're going to dive into today's message. Father God, we ask your blessing today to be with us, to let us glorify you and to praise you in the blessings that you give us, to praise you in the joy that we take in the blessings that you give us, to praise you in the gratitude we have for these hugely abundant blessings that we have, that you continually shower upon us, that so often we let go unrecognized in our day-to-day life. And that kind of tells you about where we're going today. Today's more of a fireside chat day than an outlined lesson. This has to do with some things I've been pondering lately. I've been working my way through a Languages of Love series, and so that's been very, very concrete. We spent about 3 months working on that, a grand total of 10 lessons with a little bit of interlude here and there. And during this arc of my life in general, I have been observing all of the opportunities that exist. All of the things that I have in my life that sometimes I don't really think about all that much. And in some chats and discussions I've been having with people as I've been considering where I'm going to be moving when I'm done in San Diego, a lot of interesting ideas have come up. Internationally, I have had Thailand suggested to me. I've been invited to India to come do some work long-term in the mission field. I have had North Korea even floated, and opportunities to go to Australia, England, a few other more conventional move there, live there, work there places. And as I've been pondering some of this, and I have some friends in Africa who are doing missions work in Africa, friends in Russia that are doing work in Russia, people from there, people going there. And as I ponder some of these things and where the mission fields are and some of the things we're doing in those various fields, to really begin to realize how blessed we are. I live in the United States of America. It is the 21st century in the United States of America. It is so easy to forget how enormously blessed I am. Simple things like I can walk, well, even in this building here, we don't have hot running water in this building, but I can go walking over to any given sink, turn a knob, and I have clean water, drinkable water. While some of my friends who are working in the mission field in some towns and in some places in the jungles of South America, often any number of areas in Africa, if they want clean water, they go walk for it. Sometimes they go walking for it for hours to bring it back in buckets. And just how huge of a blessing is it that I can walk inside my room, turn a knob, and water comes pouring out into a sink that's clean enough to drink, that is abundant enough that I can cook with it, and I can shower with it, and I can do laundry with it, and I can do dishes with it, and hot and cold running water into homes, and just the simplicity of such a blessing that we so easily take for granted. And to consider how much of the world doesn't have that blessing. Well, now here is another ponderance I was having, just thinking that level of thinking. Am I more worthy than my missionary friends in Africa who don't have running water? Am I a better person? Am I more worthy than them in some sense of worthiness that I deserve to have clean water and they don't? That I'm the type of man who walks with God and does good and great things, and so I should have hot and cold running water. But those people over there, they don't deserve it because they're not good enough people. Of course not. Of course not. And yet, here I am living with this blessing, and they aren't living with the blessing. They're living with the workout. They're living with the walk. They're living with this whole thing of if they want hot water, they'll go walking for hours to go get their water, and then they have to put it in some kind of a cauldron over a fire to heat it up if they want that water to be hot. Such a simple little thing. And then pondering the life of my father and my grandfather. And if you go back to my father's day, hot and cold running water, my grandfather's day, hot and cold running water, and you get back to about my great-grandfather and before, and now you're kind of getting to those ages where hot running water inside the house wasn't universal. And in fact, even going back to my grandfather's day, if you lived in a sufficiently rural place, hot running water inside your house might have been a little bit more difficult to come by depending what part of the country you're in. And this is just in the United States. But when you go back past Gary, past Elvin, past Mac to my ancestors in the 1800s, now you're getting back to pumps. Now the fancy country houses might have had a pump on an inside sink. And then you prime the pump, you have to have some water to pour into the pump, and you pump your water, and then of course, what's the temperature of the water? It's cool water. It's clean, assuming the pump is going down into clean water, but it's not warm. You don't have hot running water. It's a pretty big deal to get that kind of water. And then in most places, there'll be a pump outside, and in many areas, there might be one pump for the town. And people go walking to where the pump is to go get the water, depending upon the size of the town. Am I a more worthy human being than they are? Am I a better person than they are? That I get all of these blessings, but they didn't get it even just 150 years ago. And when I begin to ponder how enormously blessed I am throughout the whole arc of human history, and consider in the arc of human history, I have blessings that previous generations could not even have imagined. I remember being a kid, and my father was so impressed. There was this cool, just new thing. It was amazing what it could do. It was a thing called a computer. And they finally made them small enough that you could have them in a small business. And so in his business, they had a grand total of like 72 employees in 3 locations, and he had this computer at his business, and he wanted to show it to me because it was just so amazing when I was a kid. And so we went to the special room. You had to have a special room for your computer. This thing was the size of a refrigerator in a special room that had to be super cool. The room had to be kept down something like 65 degrees in order for this thing to function right. I have more computing power in my phone in my pocket than this refrigerator-sized thing that my dad had when he was a businessman in the 70s or 80s. I don't even remember how old I was when I saw this thing. And just how enormously blessed am I to have the existence of this technology. And we're going to levels of sophistication way beyond hot and cold running water. We're going into things that didn't even exist as little as 10 or 15 years ago. And I have it. I get to have these things. And it was funny that my mother and I were out and about, and there was a question we were wondering about, and I picked up my phone, and I'm fiddling with my phone to look it up, and it just suddenly occurs to me, like, I am on the internet on a thing in my hand. How long has this even been possible? And I'm looking at my phone, and I go, this is taking a long time to load. But you know, it wasn't that long ago. This wasn't even possible. I'm complaining about how long it takes, when just a handful of years ago, it wasn't even possible. And it's just amazing sometimes how we lose track of these blessings that are just being showered upon us every single moment of every single day, and we forget to be joyful about them. We forget to be grateful for them. They're just flooding into our lives with levels of abundance and levels of blessing and just levels of just amazingness, something that didn't even exist a few years ago anywhere, and that most of the world today does not have access to. When you roll back time and you go all the way back to Solomon, you roll back, 3,000 years ago, the days of David and Solomon. Solomon, the richest man who ever lived, who by today's standards would comfortably be a trillionaire. And if he said, I met this time traveler, Scott Conway. He came back in time, and he showed me this like little square thing he held in his hand. How much would it cost for you to make one of those, Mr. Wise Man? Wasn't even possible. Not possible. And it didn't matter how wealthy he was. We sat around saying, okay, well, he told me about this thing that they have in hot days where they turn on this stuff called air conditioning. So when it's really hot outside, they can make it cooler inside. How much would it cost to make one of those? Not even possible. Says, oh, well, he also mentioned that there was like this device thing. It sounds like it was kind of like a chariot or a carriage or a cart of some kind. But it had this contraption in the front of it underneath this thing called a hood or a bonnet, I'm not sure which, and that he could get in it, and it would go places. And it would go places at more than 10 miles per hour, even more than 20 miles per hour. I even heard it could go even faster than a galloping horse. Can you imagine? Can you make me one of those? Not even possible. And yet, we can be relatively poor in this day and age. We can be poor almost to the level of poverty line stuff, or even below poverty line stuff. We can be qualifying for various levels of government assistance. And many of us still have smartphones. In fact, there's some homeless people who have smartphones. And there's certain requirements they have to have in order to make use of them. But even being homeless with a smartphone, when you go apply for a job, it gives you a phone number that you can give a prospective employer to call you to let you know to come in. It gives the various government agencies a phone number to call you to let you know, when stuff is available and when your deadlines are, and to be able to talk to you without you always having to make it into the office every time. So much so that for a homeless person, for the average homeless person, getting a smartphone is a higher, earlier financial priority than getting a roof over their head. Because of all of the things that just having this phone in their hand will allow them to do and allow them to access, that if they can find some reasonably comfortable place to sleep, they would rather have a phone than a roof because of the utility of it. How long has this been true? Only a couple of years. This hasn't been very much of our lives, and a twinkling of an eye in the arc of human history. And it's just amazing the magnitude of the blessings that we have that we so easily overlook. So some of this caused me to kind of really reflect on my life. A year and a half or so from now, I'm likely going to be moving. One of the places, besides the international locations I just mentioned, that I could be going might be Hawaii. Well, I hop on a plane, and in 5 hours I can be in Hawaii. Could be St. Louis, Ohio. Hop on a plane, in a few hours I could be in St. Louis, I could be in Ohio. And I ponder the Oregon Trail days, where you hop in your wagon train and in 6 months you can make it to the West Coast from the Midwest. And just thinking about how amazing that is. In 1849, you're looking at a 6-month journey. And you're really hoping that you don't get stuck in the mountains and that you can find the passes and you can get through, because if you get snowed in, you could all literally die. Well, even what we call the slow way, hopping in the car and driving, you can make that same trek in a few days instead of 6 months. That you could do it in 6 days and go sightseeing instead of 6 months and hope you survive. And it's staggering to think about the blessings that we have. I was at a buffet the other day, and I just paused and I was looking at everything in this buffet and wondering, how far has some of this come? How many human beings have been involved in all of this food here? And I could just take my pick of whatever I want. Where was that lettuce grown? How many people participated in the moving of the seeds and the planting and the carrying and the tending and the harvesting and the packaging and the shipping and then getting it here and unloading just for the lettuce? And there's the lettuce and the tomato and the corn, and then there's the different meats and all the different dishes. And from dishes from all different places in the world. And particular ingredients that could have come from anywhere. Who even knows? And how stunning that is that I live in that world. And sometimes I forget to appreciate it. And as I'm learning to be more mindful of the abundant blessings that I have, begin to notice some things. There was a movie that was in theaters a while ago. Some good things, some bad things. So I decided not to go see it in the theater. But I figured, oh, when it comes out on disc, maybe I'll see it. And I figured, well, pop over to a place, rent it for $1 or $2, and take a look at it then. Probably don't want to spend the money buying the disc if I'm not sure I'm going to like it. And I wandered into the library, and there one was up on the shelf. Checked it out for free. What a blessing that is. That I have a public library. And a moment like that makes me stop and go, oh, I was thinking I wanted to see this movie. And then looking around, there's like millions of dollars of books in this library and available that I can order up and have delivered to that library. And then I can return it to any library. So I didn't even have to return it to that library, because there's a library down over the Casa de Oro library. I could return it in Rancho San Diego. I could return it in La Mesa. And wherever I return it, they'll check it in, mark it as checked in right on time, and then they do whatever they do with it from there. I could tell them that, I want this particular book, and say, oh, well, we don't have a copy of that book, but there's a copy of this book in our branch up in Vista. So we'll just let the Vista branch know to send it into the system, and it'll get here, and then when it gets here, we'll let you know, and you can come in and you can pick up the book. I'm ordering the book. The book is being shipped to my local library for free. How blessed am I that I could be sitting in a seminar, and they could mention a book, and I jot down the name of the book, and then I can go online through an app on my phone and see if my library has that. And if it's not in my particular branch, I can tell, oh, I want this book. And then it's on the way. Sometimes in days, sometimes in a couple of weeks, depending how popular it is. I was at a seminar last year in the Phoenix area, and someone had mentioned a Napoleon Hill book. And it was something like a conversation with the devil sort of thing. Kind of like screw tape letters type of approach to things, that I'd never heard about that. Apparently it was a fairly new book. There were some conditions upon its release, and those conditions had been met, so now it was out. Thought, well, that sounds interesting. I don't know if I'd want to go out and buy it, but I would like to see it. And so I ordered it up. And as I flipped through it a little bit, I thought, well, this is kind of interesting. This is good food for thought. Well, you know what? I looked it up, and they had an audio version. So, well, great. I'll order up the CDs. And so now I have the audio version, and I have the physical version. So I can flip through the physical version, be listening to the audio version in my car, and then write my report on my book. And then when I sit down to write my report on my book, because I'll read sometimes 50, 60 books in a year. Well, what I do to kind of get that information lodging in my brain is then I keep reports. And so when I sit down to do the report, well, what am I doing the report on? On a computer. When I learned how to type, I was using a mechanical typewriter. It's one of the, you hit a button and you mechanically push the button down, and mechanically takes this thing that would clack on a ribbon that has ink on the ribbon that would then leave the impression of the letter on the paper, on the physical paper. And then you kind of type along one line. If you made a mistake, you can't backspace. You have to roll it up. You have to take your white out, which was a fairly new invention way back then. Do your white out, let it dry, line it back up again, and then start typing again. And it was a bit of an adventure. And get to the end, you hit the ding, and slide it back. And that was what I learned to type on. Now I'm sitting here on a computer. If I misspell something, the computer will tell me. Depending how your autocorrect is set up, your computer will fix it for you. Now, sometimes it's a little bit glitchy about what it thinks you meant. And so that does happen too, because it's not always 100%. But it's fixing some of your stuff. Now, sometimes, admittedly, that can make me a little bit lazier in my typing, because I know it's going to fix a lot of my ordinary mistakes. But isn't that an amazing world we live in? It is absolutely stunning. When I was a substitute teaching at a friend's class last week, I put it in my calendar on my computer, and I set notifications. So the computer would remind me the night before, remember, tomorrow you have this unusual thing in your schedule. And then in the morning, it reminded me again, remember, you have this class to go teach. I woke up to that smartphone, that computer in my pocket thing, that set 2 alarms. One alarm said, time to wake up. The other alarm said, if you're not already in your car, go get in your car and get going to teach your class. What an amazing world we live in. And then I got in my car, and and I don't even know how many pieces it takes to make this car. And it runs. And I drive what would take me hours and hours to walk. And in a little over 20 minutes, I'm pulling in the driveway miles away. It's amazing when you consider how blessed you have to be to have all of that. And one of the interesting things as I ponder all of this is I'm not more worthy than the people who don't have it. I mean, do I deserve all these things? Well, I deserve it in the sense that, I earned the money that bought the car, and I bought the car. I earned the money that bought the phone, and I bought the phone. I earned the money that bought the thing, I bought the thing. I earned the money that pays for the internet, and I paid for the internet. So, I mean, in that sense, I deserve it because I paid the money for it. I deserve it because I earned the money that I used to pay the money for the thing. But I'm not more worthy than the people for whom these things don't exist. I'm not more worthy than the people for whom the economic opportunity to earn the money to pay for these things exists. I'm not more worthy than a great person 50 years ago. I'm not more worthy than a great person 100 years ago. I'm not more worthy than King Solomon. I just have it. And I have it because I'm a 21st century American. I'm a first worlder in the 21st century. And it is staggering for me to consider the magnitude of the blessings that I have. Yesterday I was part of belt testing. I was a guest master at a belt test. And as we're doing things, there's simple little things that they put on safety gear. Back when I started martial arts, there was no safety gear. If someone made a mistake, you got punched with bare knuckles. You got kicked with a bare foot. Now, if someone makes a mistake, you get punched with a padded hand or you get kicked with a padded foot. That shift is pretty meaningful. We have standing heavy bags. So that means that we have half a dozen, maybe more than half a dozen standing bags. We can just pull them out on the mat and people can punch and kick things and actually get to punch and kick things that stand up by themselves. Whereas back in my day when I first started training, if you didn't have the framework and the expense to have a hanging heavy bag someplace, you weren't going to have something like that you could punch and kick. We have these body shields, these giant rectangular shields that you can hold, that you can practice your kicks full power and full speed, and someone can hold it for you and give you a good target. Back when I first started training, we didn't have stuff like that. You couldn't just call up a martial arts supply place and say, yeah, we need a dozen of these things so that we can run a good-sized class. Didn't even exist. I'm not a more worthy martial arts instructor than the martial arts instructors I learned from, except that I have all of these tools available. It's amazing. And in this entire process, if I begin to really understand, I don't have these things because I'm a better human being. I don't have these things because I'm a better man. I don't have these things because I'm a better teacher. I don't have any of these things because I'm a better Christian. And in many, many ways, possibly even because of all of these things, I'm a worse Christian. I'm a worse man. That there's so many things that I lean upon technology to do that it might be possible to do without it, but I wouldn't even know where to begin. Had a running joke with one of the ladies in my life that, she knew how to dress animals. I mean, she grew up with, deer hunting season, and literally they would bring the deer in, they put newspaper all over the kitchen table, plunk the dead deer on there, and she knew how to skin the deer and prep the meat and do all of that stuff. If we ever had the zombie apocalypse and now we're having to hunt for our food, okay, I might be able to hunt down an animal and kill it, and then I kind of go, all right, well, now what? How do you turn this into like a meal? How do you make it into food? And the answer is, I really don't know. You know how I do meat? Probably like all the rest of us do meat. I go to the grocery store, I buy my meat, and then I grill it or cook it or whatever the means of preparing that particular meat might be. But grilling the meat is about as close as I come to, hunting it to making it. Someone else has already done all of that part. I just pick up the prepared meat. I wouldn't know how to do that stuff. My grandfather, my grandmother knew how to do that stuff. My great-grandparents knew how to do that stuff. It would get down to my father. My father knew how to do some of it. He knew how to do the fish. I could probably do fish. I learned fish when I was a kid. I was part of, killing fowl. I did some work on a farm. But, you get up to the level of, even the pork and the beef, and it was we send it to the slaughterhouse and we get back the meat. I wouldn't know how to do that. And then growing all of the food. I mean, the basics of, you put seeds in the ground and plants happen. Okay, I get it about that far, but all of the pieces and details that go into that, I have relatives and I have family friends that do farming, and during planting season, life is crazy. During harvest season, life is crazy. In between, life isn't as crazy, but it's completely unknown because you're always responding to conditions. And you might have completely insane seasons, and you could have an entire year's crop wiped out, an entire year's work wiped out, depending upon what happens. And some stuff you can mitigate, and some stuff you can't. I don't know what that kind of life is like. I've never lived the kind of life where if you have 2 bad seasons, your entire family is out of business. I've never had that. I've never lived there. How blessed am I? So very often it is so easy to overlook the abundant blessings. And when we begin to think about the things we complain about, there's this whole theme of memes called first world problems. And the idea of first world problems is the things that you can only complain about in the first world. The things you can only complain about because you live a life of such opulent abundance, a life of such technological sophistication, a life of just so much opportunity that this could even be a problem. I don't live in a world where I wonder if I'm going to be alive at the end of winter. My great-great-grandparents grew up in a world where you didn't know if you were going to make it through the winter. I'm not a better human being than they are. I just live in a more opulent age than they do. And a week from today, I'm going to be in Las Vegas, like already in Las Vegas. And I think about the opulence there. I am going to be staying in a 1-bedroom condo. Or I guess I personally will be staying in a 2-bedroom condo. Originally set up so that my mother and stepfather could come join me, but it turns out they're not going to make it. As I walk into this condo, I'm going to have hot and cold running water inside. So it's not like, Oregon Trail days where you set up your tents and you're just sleeping under the stars. I'm going to have a shower. There's going to be a bath. There's going to be a nice bed. There's going to be a balcony with a view. On the grounds, there's 2 big pools. There's water slides. There's jacuzzis. There's a restaurant on property. I mean, just staying on the resort is opulent. And how easy would it be for me to complain about some relatively trivial little thing when I'm staying in the middle of this opulence? The convention that I'm attending is at the Bellagio. You go to the Bellagio, you have the Bellagio fountains up in front. How much does it cost to get to see the Bellagio fountain shows? That's free! Inside they have this thing called the conservatory. And it's this amazing, magnificent kind of indoor garden thing. How much does it cost to go visit the conservatory? That's free. If you like artistic glasswork, there's a Chihuly installation in the main lobby. How much does it cost to go see that? That's free. Now, it's free if you don't gamble. The gamblers actually pay for that with their losses, because that's how, of course, they make their money. But you don't have to pay money to get to these things. I'm going to be in the middle of that kind of opulence. And what will it cost me to get to enjoy those things? Nothing. It's going to be free. And to be able to walk around under those conditions, annoyed, angry, not having any sense of gratitude, not having any sense of joy, not having any sense of appreciation for what I am in the middle of, I think would be horrific. These things didn't even exist 20 years ago. My father never got to see these things. He died back in 1989. And what these things looked like in 1989 is very, very different. I get to enjoy spectacle that didn't even exist while he was alive. So in this entire mix of realizing I'm not more worthy than these people, but I get it. This isn't a worthiness thing. I don't have it because of who I am. I'm a better man than they are. I'm a more valuable man than they are. The richest man in the world a generation ago couldn't have had this. Howard Hughes himself could not have sat down to enjoy the Bellagio fountains. They didn't exist. Andrew Carnegie couldn't have enjoyed the canal shops at the Venetian. It didn't exist. And I am in the middle of all of this opulence on this trip. And how much this year in particular I will pause and savor it at a whole different level. As over the last month or two, I've really been pondering this magnitude of blessing that is just showered upon me and showered upon me and showered upon me. These enormous values that isn't available to most people in the world, but it is available to me. And even many of these things that might have a cost connected to them, and sometimes, costs we occasionally complain about, well, that's too much money. Well, it might be a lot of money, but the things didn't even exist a few years ago. Earlier this year, I went to Universal Studios. I remember going on the studio tour when I was a kid. And there really wasn't much more than a studio tour, a stunt show, not much in the way of rides. I remember when the first handful of rides were beginning to show up, the first handful of attractions were beginning to show up. And that was a big deal. Now they have the whole Wizarding World of Harry Potter that I got to go visit. That was pretty amazing. They kind of see this construction they did there. And they had a Jurassic Park ride that in the next year or so I think is being replaced with a Jurassic World ride. I don't know how much change they're going to make in it for that. This is some pretty spectacular stuff. Went to Knott's Berry Farm, and I remember being in Knott's Berry Farm when the big rides was the log ride, the little train ride, and then the bigger train ride. And some of the things that exist today, it's just mind-bending what's there. I remember wandering around the old ghost town area back when I was a kid, and that was like the big attraction. In fact, that's the first thing that Walter Knott was building, was the attractions related to the ghost town area. And it's huge. I've been to Disneyland and California Adventure. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I remember going there, dating myself a bit, back when you would buy the ticket books and you have A tickets and B tickets and C tickets and D tickets and E tickets. And some of you have to buy extra E tickets so you could go on the E ticket rides, and you'd end up with extra A and B tickets left over because you kind of did mostly C, D, and E rides while you were there. And I remember those days. And the things that are there now are just mind-blowing compared to the things that were there when I was a kid. And it's not that we've gotten any more worthy as people. It's just we are more blessed with these opportunities, whether we can avail ourselves of them or not. The San Diego Zoo has always been at the apex of zoos in the world. I mean, when they say the world famous San Diego Zoo, they literally mean it's world famous. If people on the planet have heard of one zoo on the planet outside of their country, it's probably the San Diego Zoo. If they have heard of one zoo outside of their state, it's probably the San Diego Zoo. I mean, it's the zoo. And it continues to upgrade. I was there recently, and there's the Elephant Odyssey, and there's this area called Africa Rocks and Tiger River, and there's all of these enormously opulent places with these animals on display, where the animals are being well cared for. And sometimes in a surprising way. At Africa Rocks, they have some leopard sharks, I think they're leopard sharks, and penguins in the exact same enclosure, African penguins. And they're swimming in the same water. Now me, not knowing anything really about the animals, I look at that and go, okay, I assume they know that the sharks aren't going to eat the penguins, or they wouldn't be doing this. But it's pretty amazing to stand there and just look at that and ponder all of that. And I have passed Balboa Park for all of the museums, and getting to enjoy the museums and enjoy that art. All of these things that might not have been available for people to go see a couple of 100 years ago. And it's all there. How blessed am I, with blessings on top of blessings on top of blessings on top of blessings. And the more I ponder the blessings on top of blessings on top of blessings, the more I am impressed with the magnitude of my lack of gratitude. Now, it's not the magnitude of my ingratitude. It's not that I look at those things and go, whoa, I don't care, that's just stupid. I don't even like it. No, the lack of gratitude it's the thing that I should have some gratitude for, but I just don't think about it. It's not that I don't like it or I complain or grumble about it. It's just that I am oblivious to it. Because it's like the fish being aware of water. This is just the world in which I live. And sometimes without the contrast, without pondering it in our minds to think about how different it is for most of the world, how different it has been for most of human history, that we forget that sometimes the things that we complain about, the things that we gripe about, the things we allow to make us most miserable, or inconsequential in the grand scheme of most of human history and most of human experience. And that most of humans in most of history and most of the world would be thrilled to switch places with us. And how easy it is to forget that. When I'm standing in line complaining about how long the line is, how many people in the world would love to be in Disneyland have that line to stand in? Probably most of the kids on the planet. And I'm standing there going, this line is 45 minutes long. This is ridiculous. I should have gotten the fast pass. And they're going, whoa. You're in Disneyland. This is crazy. This is awesome. Enjoy the crazy awesome. Occupy yourself while you're in the line. How many people in the world go say, well, you're spending 45 minutes standing in the line. That only gets me halfway to where my clean water is. It's really not even all that clean. And by the time you're done with your ride, you're standing in your next line. Okay, now I have my water, and now I'm starting to walk back home. And by the way, while you're grumbling about that second line, now I've made it home with my water, and now I need to boil my water so that way it'll be safe enough to drink, because it's maybe clean enough to wash something in, but it's really not clean enough to cook with yet. And so I have to boil it to make it safe. And by the time you're grumbling about your third line, I can finally start making food. And I can only start making food that I gathered that day because I don't have a refrigerator and I don't have a freezer, and so I can't keep food for days and days and days like you can. And so while you're standing in line at Cafe Orleans waiting to be seated and grumbling that there's a 20-minute wait to be seated when, darn it, I had a reservation. I'm trying to see if I have enough food to feed my family today. How many people in the world would be glad to switch places with the Disneyland grumbler? Most of the people in most of the world, and throughout almost all of human history. And the more cognizant I am about the context of my life, the more grateful I am for every little blessing I have. And it is amazing to consider how enormously blessed I am. It really is. I'm hugely blessed. And if I do my rather formulaic prayer when I'm praying to God, adoration for God's character, who God is. Well, that will probably be pretty much the same across all of human history because God is who God is. And we derive much of who God is from the Word of God, from the Bible itself, which for centuries now we've had to read for ourselves. For centuries before then, it was often read to you, but you could still lean on the lessons from the Bible as they were passed to you through an intermediary. And then somewhat by your own personal experience in the world. Your personal experience dealing with God's creation, which for modern urban people, it's really easy to be disconnected from God's creation and God's principles because we have so many man-made mechanisms between us and the natural systems. So if you're a farmer and you have to be aware that there's a season for preparing the soil, there's a season for planting, there's a season for tending the crops, there's a season for taking care of vermin, there's a season for taking care of everything else that might interfere with your crop. That you understand that there's good seasons and there's bad seasons. There's good crops and there's bad crops. You understand that just the nature of climate and the nature of weather could possibly wipe you out, and that's just part of how it works. And that you have your harvest season, that you're going to keep your best grain for planting for the next season. Except in this modern age, even if you used 100%, you can just go buy more seed. But back in the day, a couple of hundred years ago, you would keep the best of the seed for planting for the next season. And you wouldn't eat the seed corn. I mean, you could be half starving, and you're not going to eat your seed corn. Because if I eat my seed corn, we have no seed. If we need the seed corn to survive the winter, we're going to have a big problem come summer because we're not going to have a crop. Because spring's going to roll around, we can prep the soil, but if we have no seed to plant, we have a big problem. We just ended our game by eating our seed corn. And that was life then. And so you're connected to these natural systems. You understand kind of the way nature works. You understand the engineering of God's creation. But the more you live in a city, if I want corn, I go to the store and buy corn. What happens if we eat all of my corn? I go to the store and buy more corn. I don't have to save seed corn for next season. I don't have to take this months-long process to get it. I just go to the store and I buy it in the can, or I buy it in the frozen bag. And I buy these ears of corn, and then I have to shuck them, and that's like as close to nature as I get, is buying ears of corn I have to shuck. And I'm disconnected from the natural system. And so it's really, really easy living in an urban or suburban environment to lose that connection with God's creation, because God's creation and the mechanics of it is like over there. And I've got all of these intervening principles and mechanics in operation before it gets to me. And so I don't know what's going on over there. Like, you eat the hamburger over here, and what do you do to get the hamburger? You popped into McDonald's, you order the hamburger. But somewhere back down that path, someone helped birth the calf. Someone was herding cattle. Someone was feeding the cow. And I'm particularly blessed that I have enough exposure to that with my grandparents' farm that I fed a cow that I later ate. And I fed pigs that I later ate. And I've gathered eggs from chickens. And I've gone out in the morning to gather my breakfast. So I know what some of that is like. But I've never grown up on a farm where that's what it takes to live. So I've seen the mechanic, but I haven't had to live by the mechanic. And so I have a good appreciation for a city boy, but I really am a city boy. I've lived in cities and suburbia. And I've seen the rural living. I've seen the principles, but I haven't had to live or die by the principles. I've just gotten to see it from over here. I've gotten to visit it. And to realize how blessed I am requires consciousness, requires the mindfulness, requires settling in with God on the blessings. So when I get to adoration, because that's so drawn from the Word of God and from the mechanics of God's creation, that's probably not meaningfully different from the kind of adoration of God that could have been done a generation ago, 5 generations ago, 10 generations ago. Confession. The sort of trouble I can get in might be a bit different. But when I'm confessing to God, the fact that there is an ideal, and I never nail the ideal, okay, that might be pretty much the same. But when it comes to Thanksgiving, if I am going to be exhaustive in my list of things to be thankful for, if I'm going to really settle in there, how much longer would my list be than it even existed 20 years ago, 50 years ago, my Father's Day, my grandfather's day, that Gary Conway at my age, these things didn't even exist to be thankful for them. Alvin Conway at my age, these things didn't even exist to be grateful for them. Mac Conway at my age, these things didn't even exist. That Mac Conway's greatest achievement was getting through the other side of the Great Depression. And you go back generations before then, you go back to my Japanese ancestors, my Native American ancestors, you go back to my European ancestors, the Irish who came here during the potato famine, the English, the French, the Spanish, the Italian, the Germans who all came over. The Native American ancient tribes with whatever trials and tribulations they had trying to survive winter by winter by winter. And the blessings that I have that I could be thankful for are orders of magnitude beyond what even existed for them. I don't get to spring, and I'm praying, thank you, Lord God, for carrying my family through the winter. Thank you, Lord God, for giving me enough abundance in the fall that we had enough food to eat during the winter. That thought doesn't occur to me. You know what I do in the middle of winter when I'm running low on food? I go to the store and I get more food. You know what I could do if I don't have enough income to be able to afford food in the United States of America? I can go apply for food stamps, and the government will give me money to go buy food. What if I don't even qualify for food stamps, so I can't get very much of them? But I'm just going through kind of a hard season at the moment. There's food charities, food banks. I could go get food really, really cheap or get food really, really free. Whereas a couple of 100 years ago, if you're running low on food in the winter, you've got a problem. The best hope you have is that you have some generous neighbors who saved more abundantly than they need, because it's going to be hard for them to share with you if they're kind of running a little tight on the survival of their family too. So there's things that I'm not thankful to God for because it's a given. There's things I don't express my gratitude to God for carrying me through because it's not an issue anymore. And so sometimes I might benefit from being thankful to God for the fact that it's not an issue anymore, for the fact that I don't get to springs. Having to be grateful to have survived a winter. It's amazing to think what isn't an issue anymore. And when it comes to the huge abundance of things to be grateful for in my life, to be grateful that I have knobs I can turn that brings water into my house, to be grateful that I have this giant box that I put stuff in and it keeps it cold. The other part of the giant box I put stuff in, it keeps it frozen. So I'm not having to gather food every single day. That I only have to gather food, however often I want to gather food. And you know, and that we have so much abundance in the food that we have that I trust my family's not the only family that's ever done this, where you go digging through your freezer, you find some stuff you had in there for so long, you don't even know what it is anymore. And when my mother moved, we're digging some stuff out. Now, she got in a habit because she knew she did this, she'd write like dates on it. And some of the stuff, the date was so long ago, and it's gotten so frosted over that we don't even know what it was. So then she has the date and what it is, so that we know what it is. And how much food got thrown away could have fed an entire family for a week back in the day. And we have so much abundance that we can afford to do that. I mean, I have this thing about wasting food, but even though I have this thing about wasting food, you know, I just had to throw out a bunch of corn on the cob just because I didn't get around to making it in time and it started to spoil. If I was in the Great Depression, if I was in one of those eras where you're trying to survive the winter, it still would have been eatable food. Okay, it would be worth the time to carve out the parts that were spoiling and still to put in a pot and boil it up to try to make sure you kill anything that might be a problem in there and then eat it because it's got calories and it's got some nutrition in there. And back in the day, you weren't going to let that go to waste. As much as I don't like food going to waste because I just don't like food going to waste, there was a day that was still survival. And to be grateful to God that I don't live in those days. To be grateful to God for just all of the conveniences that I have. To be grateful to God for the car that I have to drive. That maybe it needs some work. It needs $1,000 of work to get it in more tip-top shape. But I have a car. It gets me where I want to go. If I got the last of my repairs done that needs to be done, it would probably get another 4 or 5 miles of the gallon. But even at 18 miles of the gallon, it gets me where I want to go. At speeds that would be crazy just 150 years ago. On roads often that didn't even exist when I was born. And to be grateful to God for that kind of blessing. On a hot day, and certainly when I get to Las Vegas, the forecast says it's going to be about 104 is the average, 103, 104, and 105 degrees are the forecast. I'm going to walk into my condo, my rental condo for the stay, and it's going to be air conditioned. It might be 105 degrees outside, but you know what? It's going to be 78 degrees inside. And to be grateful that this technology exists that can be in the middle of the high desert in July and be in a nice, cool room. It's amazing when you ponder all of the blessings that we have. Just the opportunities of things to go visit. The opportunities of things to go do, whether you do them or not. I have a friend who's been doing some surfing. Well, think about how many places in the world you can do surfing. And I was particularly impressed by that recently when my niece, who lives in Ohio, had mentioned that, one of these days I want to see the ocean. I live in San Diego. The ocean's just like right over there. If I want ocean, I go 20 minutes that way. If I want mountains, I go 20 minutes the other way. If I want desert, I go an hour past the mountains. If I want to go skiing, I've got skiing 3 hours one way. I've got the zoo and SeaWorld in town. I've got Disneyland and California Adventure a little to the north. I've got Knott's Berry Farm 20 minutes past that. I've got Universal Studios another half hour past that. I've got Six Flags Magic Mountain another half hour past that. It's amazing what's available to me. And it's sometimes I forget why, because I've lived here since 1965. And it's easy to overlook. In fact, that's part of what stirred up the year of San Diego, was to go see all the amazing things there are to do and see around San Diego. Oh, Legoland. I forgot Legoland. That's what started that whole thing off. And so if I really want to be grateful, if I really want to settle into Thanksgiving, I can literally spend hours on Thanksgiving. Do adoration, confession, and hours on Thanksgiving. One particular prayer time, I was struggling with some things. And because instead of just going and praying for the thing, I walked through the process. So while my first inclination is, God, you have to help me with this, please. I need your help. Then, okay, well, that goes supplication for myself. Well, I do adoration first, and confession second, and thanksgiving third. And when I do the supplication, I do that for other people first. Well, in this particular prayer walk I went on, adoration, praising God for who He is. That went about a normal amount of time. Confession, confessing God for where I've knowingly and even willfully missed the mark. That went about a normal time. And then I kind of got going on Thanksgiving. And I'm walking laps in this big recreational center park area. And as I finally exhausted my Thanksgiving time, I looked at the time, and I had spent 4 hours just on Thanksgiving. And I felt so settled. I felt my life was so abundant, even opulent, having exhausted my sense of Thanksgiving, everything I could think of, until I'm pretty sure I'm almost definitely repeating myself. And then I prayed for other people. And then I found that when I came to praying for the thing that was troubling me so much 5 hours earlier, I felt really settled about that. And when I felt emotionally really settled about it, I suddenly saw answers. And so much of the answers I saw came out of the gratitude that I had. And so when you're coming into a situation, and this is something I found from my personal experience, and you can determine if your own experience ends up matching up with that or not, that when you realize how much God has given you, very often you realize how small a step it is from where you are to what it is you're asking for. So if I feel like I have nothing, and I'm asking someone for $10, I'm asking someone for a $20 bill, I mean, that seems like a lot. But if I already know that I've been given $10, $20, $100, $500, $1,000, and I just need $10 more, then it's just $10 more. It's just $20 more. Then it doesn't feel like it's that big of an ask. And when you begin to realize how abundantly you've been blessed, you begin to realize sometimes how small a step it is, the extra little blessing you're asking for. And sometimes you even realize this extra blessing you're asking for really isn't all that necessary. Sometimes you realize you don't even need to ask God for it. That once you're settled into all of the blessings you have, it taps you into all of the resources you have, and you begin to realize how easily you can just do it yourself. And you don't even need God to intervene in any kind of a supernatural way to kind of tip the balance of cause and effect in your favor in any meaningful way. That He's already given you the open door. He's already given you the open window. He's already given you the clear path. It's right there. The answer was already there. You couldn't see it. And at the time you immersed yourself with God in gratitude, opened your eyes to see it. As you begin to wander the path of your abundance, and as you wander the path of the abundance you already have, you begin to realize how small a step it is to that extra little thing you're asking for. So if I'm busy walking a path and say I need a little bit more money, I just don't quite have enough money. But I realize that I've had thousands and thousands of dollars pass my way. And just right now, I'm just a couple of $100 short. And I begin to realize, oh, wait, that's been there all along. The opportunity to work for it, perhaps. A place where I can go and give a couple of $100 of value and be paid a couple of $100. That's sitting right there. Even a place where, depending upon the level of the need, I can just go ask for a couple of $100 and it'll be given to me as a gift. I know right now, I've got some priorities that I'm undertaking, and I'm gathering up the money to do my own priorities, so it's not really an emergency. But what if I had an emergency? That I have at least 3 people I know I could get on the phone and let them know, okay, I need $200. Can I have $200? I know at least 2 people I can call and tell I need $1,000. Can I have $1,000? And at least one person I know I can call that if say, I broke my arm and I needed $2,500 for my medical care and that wasn't going to be covered by insurance, I could make a call and at least one person, possibly 2 people, will say, okay, here's my credit card number. Go ahead and run the card, pay for your thing. Well, then why would I worry about money? If I really, really need it, and they can see I've been responsible with the resources I have, so that I didn't create my own mess. That I have people who would do that for me. I have so much abundance in my life. And then back to the technology thing, if I call someone on the East Coast who's going to give me $1,000, that the technology exists right now. I can enter it in on this computer in my pocket, in the right piece of software, and they give me their card number and the card information, and then boom, the money's in my account. And I can go spend it right now. I just did this for a friend where they were borrowing some money, but they didn't have the ability to accept the money. And so the other person put the money on their credit card. The money got entered into my account, which we can access through a credit card, and then they paid their bill on my credit card. And the whole process took about 10 minutes. And how amazing is that someone out of town could give them numbers over the phone. We enter it in on a handheld computer, and then boom, the money's there. And then they go into a website on their computer, and they set up that card as a method of payment, type in a few numbers, and then boom, the bill's paid. How amazing is that? I may not need to avail myself of that process right now, but how blessed am I that I get to be in that chain and watch that blessing be passed along that gets someone's rent paid. That's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. And so if I really settle into gratitude, if I really settle into an attitude of gratitude is be thankful for everything you would not want to lose. And look around your life at all of these things you would not want to lose. And you really begin to realize how enormously blessed we are. A poor person living in the first world compared to most people in most of human history, compared to most people in most of the world today, and how enormously blessed we are. Imagine you walk into your bathroom, and one of your thoughts is a realization, oh, I have an in-house outhouse. It wasn't that many generations ago that you would have to go outside to an outhouse to use the bathroom. The water closets are a fairly recent invention. Wasn't too much longer before that where there might not even have been an outhouse. A friend of mine was down in Peru on a missions trip, and she kind of needed to use the bathroom, and she knew, okay, well, we're going into a town later on, so I'm just gonna not drink anything, not eat anything, and wait till we get to the town, and I'll be okay. So she gets to the town, and they're invited into a house, and it's the dirt floor in the house because they don't have flooring. And she asked where the restroom is, where the bathroom is, where do I go to the lavatory? And the answer was all the world, which is pick a place in the field. There's not even an outhouse. There's not even an outhouse. It's just, go in the field somewhere. It says, which field? Well, that field over there. It's like the one where the kids are playing. That doubles as your latrine area. That's the lavatory. That's where you go. So, well, yeah, and of course. And that's life in chunks of the world today. Imagine if you walk into your bathroom and you think, I have an in-house outhouse in a world where not even everyone has an outhouse. I have an in-house outhouse in a world where these things have only existed for a handful of generations. And I have one. If I could travel back in time to Mac's parents and tell them, you guys ever heard of an outhouse? Oh, yeah, we've seen outhouses. Not everyone has one, but we know what you're talking about. So I'm going to have one of those inside. And look at me, it's like, how rich are you? Oh, you must be one of those really rich people. You're like noble born? Are you a prince from somewhere? Like, no, I'm just going to be the average poor person in 21st century America, and we're going to have outhouses inside our house. And I said, well, how would that work? Wouldn't that stink everything? Oh, no, it's okay. We have all the plumbing worked out, and and the water will swirl down and get rid of everything. Like, how many trips to the river are you going to have to make to get water to waste it that way? You go, oh, well, no, the water will be pumped into the house. Oh, I'm just going to get tired of having to pump that much. Oh, no, it's going to be automatically pumped. I'm not going to have to pump it. It's just going to come in because there's machines that will do that for me. You go, whoa, you must be really, really rich. Yeah, and I'm going to turn on my water, and I'm going to get water, I'm going to brush my teeth. He said, you're going to what? Brush my teeth. What are you talking about? Brushing my teeth. Why are you brushing? Is your teeth hairy? I don't get it. Mm-hmm. And begin to realize all of these simple things that is our day-to-day reality that we just don't think about would be a huge evidence of enormous wealth a handful of generations ago. And if we can be grateful for those things, I can go to my closet and I have so many clothes to choose from. If you were going to have a dozen different outfits to choose from 200 years ago, would that be evidence of wealth? Absolutely. There was a day where if you had one good change of clothes, that was doing pretty good. And then you'd have your Sunday best that you would only wear every once in a while. And if you wanted things laundered, there was a time in history where getting things laundered was such an expensive endeavor. They would gather it up, they would put it on a ship, they would ship it to the Orient, launder it in the Orient, put it on a ship back to the States, and ship it back to you. Laundry was a 6 to 12 month endeavor sometimes, depending where you lived. And then when the Chinese laundries opened in parts of the western area of the United States, that was huge. Like, whoa, you could get your laundry done here. So there was a day. Taking a shower every day. It hasn't been that long since we've been doing stuff like that. Walking outside, getting in a car, Thinking about cars in the 1920s and 30s. My grandfather had a Model T. He bought this old used Model T cheap, and he fixed it up himself and got it running again, and that was his car for a while. And at his age, when he was a young man, I mean, that was like top notch. Alvin Conway had a car. Well, nowadays, like, everybody has cars, it seems. You don't have to be that wealthy to have a car anymore. But there was a day, if you had a car, you were pretty up there in the social economic ladder. If you had a phone, you were up there in the socioeconomic ladder. If you had a phone that wasn't a party line, you were way up there. You have a private line, and now we walk around with a private line in our pocket. And if you just walk through your day moment by moment, and just think about what most of the world doesn't have that we have, and you begin to notice these things, the level of gratitude in which you can live is incredible. And imagine just the emotional and the mental health of living in this grateful place. Imagine this love and joy and peace you can live in if you have a recognition of all of your connections, all of the opulence that is available to you, all of the things you don't have to worry about. So a life of love, even just in the last 24 hours, I've had conversations with people hundreds and even over 1,000 miles away. I can sit down and I can type, and they can type back in real time. I can get on my phone, I can call them, we can have a conversation in real time. How much of the world can do that? And how much of human history has that been possible? I get to connect with my mother in Texas. She's in Texas. I'm not sending her a letter that's carried by the Pony Express. I'm not sending her a telegram that someone has to type up and take out to her. I pick up that computer in my pocket and I call her, and I can hear her voice and I can chat with her. And unlike when I was a kid, it's not this long distance phone call for $4.25 a minute where you have to sit down and make a little outline of what you're going to talk about, and you're watching the second hand on the clock because if you cross that 1 minute mark, they're going to ding you for a whole other minute, and you want to have a conversation. You decide how many minutes can we afford, and then you cut it off within the 10-second window before the end of that minute so you don't get dinged for another minute. No, I just call her and we chit-chat. We're both on the same service, and it doesn't cost anything. It doesn't even use up our minutes on our service. And just how opulent is that? That is incredible. That is absolutely incredible. And so the level of love I get to live with, thanks to electronic connection, where you can connect with people thanks to technology you could never connect with before. You can get news that you could never have gotten before. You can find out what's going on with your family, what's going on with your friends from hundreds and thousands of miles away without waiting 3 months for the information to finally reach you. It's amazing. And the ability of technology and the opulence of our day-to-day life to allow us to love people, connect with family and friends and our romantic partner in ways that didn't even exist a handful of generations ago. And for joy, that opulence, and for peace, all of the problems we don't have to deal with. That the problems of today are so much less consequential than the problems of generations ago. One of the biggest ones being that we don't have to wonder going into every fall if we can reserve enough of a harvest to survive a winter. All of the things that we might have had to worry about so much. How many pregnant women in the United States of America, 21st century America, legitimately worry with every pregnancy whether this is going to be the one that's going to kill them? Not very many. But there was a day that every time a woman got pregnant, there was about a 1 in 10 chance that pregnancy would kill her. And that if she had 10 kids, that means she rolled the dice 10 times and she survived. And if she lived long enough to have 10 sons, oh, don't mess with that woman, because boy, was she tough. Because if she had 10 sons, if she gave birth 15, 20, 25 times, even if not all of them survived, because there was a day when about half of all kids born wouldn't make it, and she survived every one of those, oh, just don't mess with that woman. And of course, you don't want to mess with a woman who has that many sons in her family either. Because they'll come get you. And if they're young, they won't come get you right now. They may come get you in 10 years or 15 years. And life is just so different right now. I mean, how many of us in 21st century America, when we have a brand new baby, think, okay, well, maybe we should hold on to the important family names for 2 years to see if this baby makes it? Or do we just assume the baby will make it? So much so that when the baby dies, it's a tragedy. Where there was an age where if a baby died, that was normal. And so when we begin to think about, the level of peace that we can live with, the pregnancies are moments of joy with very little in the way of fear. Some people might be concerned about the health of the baby, but not usually anymore the survival of the mother. When the baby is born, we don't figure, okay, it's a coin toss if this baby makes it 2 years. We just assume the baby's going to be fine so long as we take care of the baby. All of the things that was live or die a handful of generations ago is presumptively not a problem now. It's pretty amazing. And so the level of love we can live with, the level of joy we can live with, the level of peace we can live with is so much more a choice than has ever been in all of human history. It really is amazing. So as I've been pondering all of this for myself, as I've been considering my own life, my own level of gratitude, my own enjoyment and savoring of the opulence of modern living, the more I've been seeking to live in greater love and greater joy and greater peace, the more I've learned to be patient, where being patient means waiting until the day after tomorrow to get to the grocery store. Instead of patient being, well, wait until the next planting, tending, and harvest season to see if we can get a good crop. I mean, just the difference in what it means today compared to what it meant 5 generations ago is incredible. And you begin to walk these things through and you begin to see that we get to decide. We really just get to decide. Do you want to live a life of love? Do you want to live a life of joy? Do you want to live a life of peace? You can choose that. We can choose it at a level we've never been able to choose it before. And we can choose it because of, rather than in spite of. And when we ponder life around the world today, we're not even saying go back 100 years, today, and consider all of the opportunities we have for someone similarly situated in the world today, we begin to realize how enormously blessed we are. And when we consider the arc of human history, when we look back over the life of the apostles, we look back over the life of the kings of Israel, we look back at Solomon, the richest man to ever live, we look back over Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, and we think about what do we have that they could scarcely imagine. Maybe we would benefit from settling into our gratitude about that. So that's kind of what I'm working on. This has been, like I said, sort of a fireside chat. There hasn't been a handout or a clear outline on this. This is more of my own ponderances for my own life. But this is one of the ponderances for my own life that I thought would be handy to share, that might be useful to other people to kind of hear where I am, where my heart is, where my mind is, how I'm beginning to look at things a little bit differently as I'm exploring options and opportunities for my life, and realizing some of the most potentially lucrative opportunities that I'm looking at are in things that didn't even exist a few generations ago. The way I'm pursuing those opportunities is making use of technology that didn't even exist even when I was a kid. I mean, forget going back to my father and grandfather's day. It didn't even exist when I was a kid. And that as I look at my relationships and my love connections and how many of them are with people that I connect with mostly through technology, to realize how much love I have in my life, how much connection with people I have in my life, that I'm connecting with them in ways that didn't even exist, that weren't even available just a handful of years ago. And I have, on balance, one of the most amazing lives I can imagine. And I am so grateful to God for all of the abundant blessings that He has showered me with, that He has immersed me with, that I have been tossed into the piles of gold and jewels and adventure. And sometimes when you're in the middle of stuff, it is so easy to overlook it. It is so easy to just not see it, like a fish not seeing water. But when we stop, or even when life stops us, to take that moment, to take a deep breath, and really open our eyes and pay attention to things we might not normally notice, and begin to appreciate the wonders and the beauty and the opulence and the abundance constantly surrounding us at all times. Try to be the fish, being aware of the water, paying attention to the blessings that we have, paying attention to the love that we have, paying attention to the joy that is just right there for us, and the peace in which we get to live because of all of the things we don't have to be concerned about, and to live a life in appreciation for the abundance God has given us. Father God, let us praise You in our love. Let us praise You with how we can show up in the lives of others. Let us praise You with how we can appreciate the gifts that You give us in the form of family and friends and romantic partners. Let us praise You in the way we show up as a gift. Let us praise You for all the treasures that You bring to us, and the treasures You give to others through us, and the treasures that others are for us, and the treasure we can be for them, and the treasures that surround us at all times. Let us, Lord, praise You by our appreciation of Your blessings. Let us praise You, Lord, with our recognition that while we are no more worthy than a great person a generation or 2 generations or 5 generations ago, that You have blessed us with such opulence. And because we have these things that we didn't become better people to get, we just get because we're here and it's now. To be grateful for that good fortune, and to be grateful for all of these things that surround us at all times, and how amazing it is. And let us praise You with that appreciation. And that when we come to You in adoration, and we come to You in confession, and we come to You in thanksgiving, that we can really settle into that thanksgiving and have that thanksgiving for the love, joy, and peace that You have given us. And then when we pray for others, in contact with all these things we're grateful for, to realize very often how small an ask that is. And when we pray for ourselves, very often to find how You've already opened doors and opened windows and lit paths for us to the very things that we're asking, and that You have already answered the prayer with opportunities, sometimes that are so easy it just takes a step or two to get there. and that it can be illuminated to us through grateful hearts that show love and concern for others as we settle into all of these blessings you have given us. And through that, Lord, that we get to live a life of such appreciation. We get to live a life of such vividness and vitality, that we get to live a life where we recognize the abundance of the gifts that you give us, and we begin to realize the enormity of the treasures that are in our lives right here and right now as we walk our lives forward into ever-increasing abundance and ever-increasing blessings. In Jesus' name we pray.